What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Reality Kingdom, where we put the real in reality or whatever, period. I'm your host, Pharaoh, and today we are going to be recapping day 36 of the Big Brother 28 live feeds. We are here, baby. Shout out to everybody in the chat. 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 If you did not know, let me remind you, Lala is the head of household. She nominated Barrett, Chuck, and Haley. Kamu won the veto, and he decided he is not using the veto. The final noms are Barrett, Chuck, and Haley. And we do have a lot of different updates going on because the girls is targeting the girls, and the girls is targeting the girls. So let's get into this motherfucking update. Boom. Last night, we saw Devins have a conversation with Drew and Barrett. And in this conversation, he planned to ask them about their alliance name. He told D that he was going to ask them this earlier in the day, and that's exactly what the fuck he did. When he asked them, Drew looked at Barrett, Barrett looked at Drew, and then they decided to reveal it's the fuck-ass people alliance. FAP, whatever you want to call it. So they have revealed FAP to Devins in this conversation, but they're like, don't worry, Mallory loves you, Melody loves you, they love you. Devin's like, great, I love both of them as well. And Drew's like, yeah, I mean, they also love Angela. They're finding the way to get close to D. They're doing all these things to make sure that Devins knows that Mallory and Melody aren't going to target them and are fucking with them, even though they have an alliance, period. So there you go. Barrett does mention that Mallory's only holdup might be D because D nominated them, but for the most part, he thinks she's good. Drew starts talking about what he would do with his HOH. He says if he were to win HOH, he'd probably put up Lala and Taylor because he doesn't really talk to them that much at all. And he feels like all of them might have different people to target. Because one thing about Drew is when he feels like he's getting caught up as playing too closely to someone, he starts throwing shit out there. So he's like, I mean, y'all might have to nominate Melody and Mallory, and that's okay. Like, y'all can nominate Melody and Mallory. I think I nominate Taylor and Lala. And it's like, girl, nobody asked all that. Calm down. But that's what he did in this moment. And Barrett says that he would nominate Kamu, Lala, and whichever person stays. And Devins doesn't tell them shit about who he would nominate. And I don't know if they picked up on that, but he didn't. But Devins does say that it wouldn't be bad for them to try to like make a relationship with Kamu and pull him in. And he's telling them that because obviously that's what he is trying to do with Dee and Angela. While they're speaking in the back room, Dee and Angela are speaking in the open room. And Angela is like, the four people, Melody, Drew, Mallory, and Barrett, I think Drew and Barrett want us to go to the end with them, and then it's not given that. And Dee is like, yes, we do need to target one of these groups, either Drew, Melody, Mallory, or Barrett, or Taylor, Lala, Yash, and them trying to pull in Kamu has to be targeted. And in this conversation, Dee's kind of like, we could target Taylor and pull in Kamu and Yash because Devins has a good relationship with Yash. I can grow a good relationship with Kamu, and we can pull both of them in if we take out Taylor. And they've gone back and forth between that group and then potentially taking out Mallory and pulling in Barrett. But it seems like more of the conversation has been towards take out Taylor, pull in Kamu, and now they're even saying pull in Yash. So there's that. After this, Dee joins Devins, Barrett, and Drew in the back room, and Drew is trying to get them to want to target Kamu. He's like, we need to target Kamu next. I feel like there's not a lot of people in the house who can beat him in the blockbuster. He might need to go. And he's like, you know what? It might even be good if Melody or Mallory win HOH because they would target Kamu for us, and that's who their main target is. And he mentions the only issue is that Melody or Mallory might renominate one of you guys. It's like one of you guys might be the renom. And Dee's like, oh, that sucks then. That means I'll have to renominate Mallory. And Barrett is like, wait, no. Well, no, wait, no. Mallory isn't going to renominate you. And Drew's like, wait, no, she wouldn't renominate you. And that's how that conversation goes. So Drew and Barrett try to like calm it down, but Dee immediately goes straight to, I'd have to put up Mallory because y'all just said that Mallory would nominate me. Ciao. Meanwhile, while they're talking downstairs, Melody, Mallory, Lala, and Taylor are upstairs. And Melody's like, by the way, we need to lock in. We need to get the job done this week and get the same person, whoever stays, whichever one of them stay out next week, period. they start discussing nominations and stuff like that. And Melody's like, I mean, there's been 3 people who voted me out, which is Yash, Chuck, and Kamu, or whoever stays in Kamu. So them 3 can be the nominees, maybe even Devins, because Devins did put me up. So that's a good reason for that. And Taylor's like, yeah, I just want to make sure the icons don't take over our season. And they start getting hyped because Melody chimes in, Mallory chimes in. They're like, yeah, we want a jury experience for ourselves. We want to be able to experience the season the same way they've been blessed to experience their seasons. So there's that. They get into Kamu because Mallory's like, ooh, if it's a knockout HOH, maybe we need to be knocking out Kamu. And Taylor's like, no, Kamu's good. Kamu's good. We can save Kamu for the end. We don't need to be putting him in over and over again. So Mallory and Melody obviously don't like this. Put a pin in that because Kamu is their target. So eventually, Drew, Barrett, and Yash join in on this conversation. So now the HOH is Melody, Mallory, Taylor, Lala, Drew, Barrett, and Yash. It's literally everyone except Chuck and Haley, the icons, and Kamu. They're all in the HOH room. And Lala starts to hold court. She says, look, lock that door. They lock the door. She says, none of this better leave this room. I swear to God, y'all, nothing better leave this room. Mallory's like, oh, nothing's going to leave the room. She's like, Drew? He's like, nothing's going to leave. Barrett? Mm-hmm. So now she gets everyone to agree. And she's like, look, we need to know what's happening these next 2 weeks. We're saying, boom, Haley, boom, Chuck. After that, 2 icons got to go before the jury. They do. And Mallory's like, wait, so we're keeping Kamu? And Lala's like, I mean, what do you think? Do you think we should? I think 2 icons can go. And Mallory's like, I just feel like he wants me out. And Lala's like, I don't think he does. I don't think that's who he's targeting. So they get into the conversation. Lala starts talking more, and she's like, we need to just agree that after Chuck and Haley, 2 icons go. It could be whichever icon y'all respect. Drew, I know you're cool with Devins, but some people might not be cool with Devins, so Devins might go first for me. But if the other person prefers that person, then that makes the most sense. But either way, after Haley and Chuck, 2 icons gotta go, period. So this was I wouldn't say a good conversation, but it was a conversation where Melody, Mallory, Lala, and Yash were all inputting. Yash was like, honestly, I don't want them to be able to have another experience, and we don't. Lala was like, yeah, one of them already won $500,000, and they had to correct her, and they was like, it's $1 million, and Lala was like, oh, $1 million? She was gagged at that. So there was a lot of conversation with Melody, Mallory, Lala, and Yash. Taylor was in the shower, and Drew and Barrett were just churning what is it called? What's it called that they eat? They slop. Churning, they slop, looking down. Barrett didn't look up once. And I'm like, y'all not noticing this? Y'all aren't noticing that Drew is all of a sudden not talking when all he do is talk all day, and Barrett hasn't said a word. Like, I need y'all to think a little bit harder. So there's that. Meanwhile, Devins is downstairs talking to Kamu while he's in the shower, and Kamu is trying to push his alliance again, because obviously Kamu wants Yash, Taylor, and Lala to work with Devins and D. So Kamu was like, yeah, I want to try to get D to be comfortable with the alliance because I want me, you, and her in as many of the same alliances as possible. So I'm just trying to work on making her feel comfortable with working with Taylor. And Devins is like, yeah, I'm trying to help it happen too. I'm trying to make it happen too. And Kamu was like, yeah, if Taylor doesn't want us to tell D, maybe me and you can make an alliance with Taylor and just tell D and Angela everything that happens in that alliance. And Devins agrees with that. So now Kamu and Devins agreed that they're going to make a 4 with Yash and Taylor and just tell D and Angela everything that happens within that 4 because he wants to work with both groups of people, honestly. So that's the plan. What else? So there's that. Good conversation. Later on, Devins talks to D. He relays this information about Kamu to her, lets her know that Kamu wants to work with them, that he likes him. And D says, Drew and Barrett got me fucked up because they think the 4 of them are going to go to the end with us, and that's not good. That's not a smart idea. So D is now talking about how it might be smarter to take out potentially Mallory or Melody. She says, probably not Melody, because Melody needs to go to the end with us, but she thinks it might be smart to take out Mallory before they even touch Yash and Taylor, because they have these fake alliances with Yash and Taylor and Kamu, and they don't have these fake alliances with Melody and Mallory at the moment. So she's saying it might make sense to take out Mallory instead. Angela comes over, and Devin also tells Angela that Kamu wants to bring her into something and for her to just wait for that to happen and be excited when it does. So there you go. Taylor walks over for a little bit, and this was a funny moment because Kamu's here now, Taylor's here now, and the icons are here. And they're talking about Angela's season of BB26. And they're like, wait, Angela, how'd you go home again? Didn't you go home in a double? And like, Angela was like, yes, I went home in a double. And they were like, did you go first or second? She was like, I went home second. It was Leah who went home first. I went home second. And Taylor was like, yeah, that's the only way to get Miss Angela out of the game. You got to get her at a double. That's the only way you get Miss Angela out of the game. And it's just like, well, no, they could have got me out at any time. They could have gotten me out at any time in the game. It didn't have to be at a double. That's not true. It didn't have to be at a double. It didn't. So Taylor ends up leaving. And when Taylor leaves, she's whispering to Kamu. She's like, Kamu, that's not true. It didn't have to be at a double. I'm telling you, it didn't have to be at a double. They could have got me out at any moment. The only reason they didn't get me out before then is because people liked me. People liked me before that. But at the time, they could have gotten me out at any time. It did not have to be a double. And Kamu was like, girl, I think she was just joking. Like, you could chill. But I found that funny as fuck. No shade. So after this, Drew and Barrett, they come down from their powwow. And they're in the kitchen. And Drew was like, that was interesting. Barrett was like, 1000% very interesting. And Drew was like, we should discuss tomorrow what we're going to do. Barrett goes, he talks to Dee really quick. He does tell Dee and Angela about the FOP Alliance, which they kind of already know, but he tells them the name. And then Dee asks, what were they talking about upstairs? And in the moment, Barrett is like, it was quite a vibe, but we didn't really get into too much. Lala was just talking about protecting Kamu a little bit. So there was that. There was kind of hope, y'all, in the potential of them not just exposing everything, but put a pin in it, I guess. You don't even got to put a pin in it. They expose it. Spoiler alert. So later on, Melody, Mallory, and Drew, they talk towards the end of the night. They're in the jacuzzi room. And Melody is like, look, we need to take out Kamu next week. If we don't, I don't think we'll ever even have the votes to get him out because Lala, Taylor, and Yash won't necessarily want to take him out of the game. So we need to make sure that we get him out. And Mallory's like, are we even going to be able to get him out if he's sitting next to the wrong person? We might need to nominate him next to an icon so that way he can even go. And Drew's like, see, but if an icon's up, it might be too enticing and people might vote out an icon. Drew's trying to kind of defend them and deflect them away from that. But Melody's like, someone also needs to beat him at the Blockbuster, though. So we kind of need to do that. And Drew's like, well, I mean, Dee hasn't won anything. Devins hasn't won anything in a while. And Melody's like, but Devins could win something. Like, he definitely could win something. So there's that. Melody and Mallory are thinking about if they need to take out Kamu, that they might need to put up an icon. But what's happening? Oh Lord. Sorry, the feed is on and the cameraman is being silly. So yes. That's the plan. They're thinking about potentially putting up an icon next to him, but I doubt it'll happen. I think they'll just settle on the Chuck and the Yash pawns of it all. Later on, Angela and Dee, they're playing around. They're supposed to be asleep. Devins is trying to sleep. He's laying down. They're playing around, Kiki Ken. Angela doing Jennifer Coolidge impressions. Oh, I really want a hot dog real bad. Real bad. She's doing Jennifer Coolidge impressions. They're laughing all loud. They start taking out the Doritos, putting the Doritos on Devins and just placing them on him while he's asleep. He starts scratching. It's itching him. And there's a moment where he gets up out of the bed. Mind you, the light's on because they up loud and giggling. He gets up out of the bed. His face is fully red. His body's red. He doesn't say a word and he walks toward the bathroom. And Angela D was like, ooh, he mad, girl. They was acting like it was a sleepover and they was 12 and they cousins. Like they was having a fucking ball, which, hey, I'm here for having a ball, but they needed to chill out. And I think they pissed off Devins, no shade. And so did they. They thought they did too, so they stopped. And the last conversation we had last night was between Kamu and Drew. And Kamu is asking Drew, who does he prefer to stay? And Drew was like, I mean, I think everyone's voting out Haley. I don't think we'll be able to convince the house not to even do that. And Kamu was like, well, honestly, in my opinion, between Chuck and Haley, I prefer Haley stay because at least I could trust her. Chuck, he just lies. And so Kamu just goes on his Chuck hate bandwagon. He talks about how Chuck was lying to Yash and Chuck was lying to him, and how Chuck will say something in the living room, but it'll be a different thing in the kitchen. How Chuck is a mooch because he's okay with allowing the other side to win the competitions and he's not going to try for the HOH, and etc. etc. He was dragging Chuck the fuck down. And honestly, Kamu has been dragging Chuck for days. Kamu is not a Chuck fan at all. And neither am I. So there's that. We get to the morning time. In the morning, they're changing their batteries to their mic packs, and Angela sees Haley in the storage room, and she says, Haley. And Haley says, yes. She says, I'm sorry. And so they hug, and Angela's like, I miss you. And Haley's like, I miss you too. And then they walk out. So they have a little moment, a little brief interaction. Drew and Barrett, they talk in the storage room alone. And Barrett is like, so I'm down to tell them about last night. And Drew's like, I'm down to do it too. I think maybe we should do it on Thursday. We don't want it to get back on you and you end up getting voted out because they found out that it got leaked or anything like that. So maybe we should tell them on Thursday. I don't know. But either way, Drew says, when we tell them, we should be convincing them that Kamu needs to go and we can't let Kamu slide by at all. And Barrett is like, yes. And the problem is that Melody and Mallory were in that conversation agreeing with everything. So that's also an issue. And Drew was like, but that's okay because after the conversation, Melody and Mallory told me they still want to target Kamu. So we need to just frame it to them in that way because that's what they said to me anyways. Drew also mentions that Chuck and Kamu don't like each other. So low-key Chuck could stay because Kamu doesn't like him. So that conversation with Kamu just made Drew want Chuck to stay even more. No shade. Drew mentions how he doesn't know where Yash is, and he thinks that maybe Yash might not put them on the block, but Yash could still not protect them if they're in any type of danger. So they start talking about who they might nominate. Barrett is like, he might nominate Kamu, Lala, and whichever person stays this week. And Drew is like, he'd probably do Yash, Lala, and whoever stays this week to backdoor Kamu. So Drew and Barrett are targeting Kamu. Melody and Mallory are targeting Kamu. It could get bad for Kamu if any of them win the HOH, for sure. Barrett also talks about how they need to paint Lala as the ringleader because she was the ringleader, and they need to push Yash as the person who was saying a lot because he was saying a lot whenever they relay it to the icons. But both of them just agreed they'll tell the icons eventually, maybe Thursday. And they weren't even sure. Like, even in this conversation, they're ending it. And they're like, I mean, we could tell them now. We could tell them Thursday. It is what it is. So there's that. The last thing they discussed is what will they do when they get closer to the end with FOP and the crossovers? And Barrett says, I mean, I think we could just stay with the crossovers because I think they trust us. The icons trust us. And when we get towards the end, if we're sitting on the block next to an icon, we'll probably stay over the icon because people will want to evict them. And Drew says he thinks this is a season where if you're sitting in final two with an icon, you could win. This is going to be a season where the people won't want to vote an icon to win. Personally, I think that might be accurate because we hear what Taylor and Lala say about someone winning the money. They're spreading that around a lot. Melody and Mallory have great relationships with Drew and Barrett. I genuinely think depending on the jury makeup, that it could be true that the jury would not vote an icon to win. I think that is very possible. So I don't think they're wrong about that sentiment. I just think that if they're going to play with that hope, that they should also push that narrative more because they actually haven't necessarily pushed the narrative that icons shouldn't win the game. It's been Taylor and potentially Lala really pushing that. So they need to keep that narrative going because if we get towards the end and they don't have that, then that won't work. And then also the issue with this is if you go to Final Five and it's three of them and two of you, you're outnumbered, but we move. So yeah, there's that. Melody and Mallory, they talk for a little bit, and Melody says that she wants to go over the dates with the Big Four so she can learn for some of these competitions. So we'll see how that goes. Haley talks to Yash, and she tries to campaign. The thing about when Haley campaigns, though, is that she's not really campaigning. She's kind of just complaining. You know, she's talking to Haley about how they turned on her and Kamu didn't use a veto on her and she wanted him to do it so she can get back with the alliance that she was with and, you know, whatever it is. And they start counting votes and she's like, damn, I don't really have them because they didn't really give me an answer about anything. So She tries to campaign in her own little way. Yash plays her and is basically like trying to count the votes with her. And he says, honestly, Kamu not using the veto on you is a very big indicator of how he feels about you and stuff like that. The one good thing about this is that Yash is maintaining a good relationship with Chuck and Haley. And that could come in handy for next week. We'll just have to see. Angela does talk to Dee. And Dee asks if she will talk to Haley anytime soon. And Angela lets her know what happened in the morning, how they hugged, and et cetera, et cetera. And then they both talk about how they feel bad that they were messing with Devins last night and making him upset. Devins walks in the room and they're like, Devins, we're so sorry for last night. They give him a hug. They're apologizing to him. So they get over it. And I don't even think Devins was that mad about it. So Devins ends up in the gym. And in the gym room, he's talking to the cameras. And he's like, oh boy. Drew and Barrett want to discuss Dee tonight. Oh boy, oh boy. Now, what happened was Drew went to Devins while they were in the bathroom of some sorts and told him he wants to talk to him tonight about something. Devins thought Drew wanted to talk to him. Drew and Barrett wanted to talk to him about Dee, but Drew and Barrett just wanted to expose what happened last night to him. So Devins just had the wrong idea of what he wanted to talk about at this time. Shade. After this, Haley talks to Chuck, and Haley tells her that Yash had a good conversation with her. She likes him, and that Yash was reminding her that Kamu Loki don't fuck with them because he didn't use the veto on her. So it did stick with her what Yash said. So there's that. After this, Taylor joins Devins in the gym, and they're chilling for a bit. Barrett's in there, and then eventually Barrett leaves, and they're alone. And Taylor immediately asks, do you feel good about adding Yash to the primaries? And Devins is like, I'm down. The primaries is Devins, Taylor, Kamu, and Yash. Taylor approached Devins and Kamu about this Eminem alliance 3 weeks back. They weren't down with it, but they made a trio between the three of them. And now they're finally adding Yash to the trio and making it a 4. And they're just going to call it the primaries. And it's still tentative of how they want to play it, but it's leaning towards they want to kind of still do the tether thing because Taylor keeps talking about it and keeps talking about it. No shade. So she starts asking him, I know you love Drew, but do you trust Drew as your tether or do you want Barrett as your tether or which is it? And Devins has yet to give an answer for this and he still hasn't given an answer for this. So she doesn't know. Taylor also lets Devins know in this conversation that the energy in the house is after Haley and Chuck go, the icons are the next in line. So she reveals this and she says, I just want to have your back and reveal this information to you because I have your back. And Devins is like, oh, well, thank you for saying that. Kamu comes in and Taylor also lets Kamu know what she just told Devins and lets Kamu know that people have been talking about how the icons in Kamu haven't been nominated yet. And Devins is like, oh, are people... no, Kamu was like, have you heard that from certain people? And she's like, it's just the littles. Like, they aren't saying it directly, but they're just putting it out there in the air. So put a pin in that, maybe, because I do think this littles versus Kamu war, like Kamu versus the FAP Alliance, that's definitely a brewing tension. And this definitely could have heightened that tension, no shade. So there's that. Kamu says if he wins HOH, he would put Mallory. He didn't want to put Mallory up. He's like, he put Mallory up his first HOH. So he doesn't want to put Mallory up his second HOH. But he does not really know who he would nominate if he doesn't put up Mallory. So there's that. And my thing is, girl, who gives a fuck who you put up on your first HOH? If you need to put up Mallory, put up Mallory. No shade. So yes, Devin starts talking about like how he doesn't really know who Melody or Mallory would nominate. And that's kind of why he's hesitant about them. And they try to figure that out, but they can't really figure it out. So then Kamu just goes into talking shit about Chuck. He's been on an I Hate Chuck campaign all day, all night. He's insinuating how he would prefer Chuck to go over Haley. Yash comes in the room, so it's all the 4 primaries in the room. But they don't even really get to talk about the alliance because Kamu is so busy trying to drag Chuck. No shade. So that's how that ends. And then we see Barrett talk to Dee. And Barrett lets Dee know there was a conversation upstairs yesterday. Child. He's giving her the tea. And he's like, who's all up there? He tells her every name of the person who was up there. And he tells her, first of all, Taylor and Lala were defending Kamu. It started off with them defending Kamu and trying to get them out of, to protect them and get them from nominating him, from wanting to target him. And then he says, Lala started holding court about a conversation about how the icons have to go. And Dee was like, who was the main one they were saying? And Barrett is like, Devins. Devins was the main person that they were saying needed to go. And Dee is like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's funny because Taylor and Lala brought me, Devins, and Angela upstairs just to make sure that we would save Kamu on the block if he was on the block next to you, Barrett. So that's that tea. The fact is that they were low-key trying to get us to vote you out if we were nominated next to Kamu. So there's that. Devins comes in and Barrett reiterates the story to Devins and tells him all the tea and tells him how Lala wanted to target him the most over everyone else. And that she said that he's the scariest person in the game. And then that she's protecting Kamu and insistent that Kamu is not a threat at all. Eventually, Drew comes in, Angela comes in. Now they're all in here able to talk. I think Devins ends up leaving, but Barrett gives Angela the same rundown about what happened upstairs. Drew chimes in and lets them know that that's exactly why we need to start targeting Kamu. Melody and Mallory are targeting Kamu. Technically, instead of a 5, we're actually a 7 because we have Melody and Mallory on our side. And I will say I like this from Drew. I feel like Barrett should be doing the same thing. I feel like implying that Melody and Mallory are just a 7 with them is a great thing to do because then it makes Angela, Dee, and Devins feel like it doesn't make sense for them to target Melody and Mallory if they're calling it a 7 instead of a 5. So I thought this was smart instinct, and both of them definitely did good at trying to steer them towards Lala and Yash, or the ones who were doing all the talking during this. No shade. So yes, Drew mentions Kamu and that Kamu is always working. Every time he comes in the room, he's trying to work us. And it's funny because after y'all had that tiffle in the gym, Kamu went around and he started telling everybody how he intentionally brought Angela up there to blow up and that she'd put on a good show for us and that he wants to make good TV. And Angela's like, that's so hurtful. Who was he saying that to? And Drew was like, I mean, practically everyone. And Angela's like, wow, what is it with this wanting to make TV shit? Like, why is that a thing? And why are people saying that? And well, so he did get Angela a little riled up, as he should. So there was that. Drew starts to also mention how Kamu told him he was in a little bit of danger last week. He's like, yeah, Kamu's making it seem like there was like this sentiment that they needed to split me up and that I was in a little danger. And Angela and Dee try to reassure him that that wasn't happening. But he does bring it up. So after this, Angela and Dee talk separately. And Dee's like, look, I think I could go either way. We could either target Taylor, Lala, and Yash, or we could target Melody, Mallory, Drew, and Barrett. She feels like because both sides want to work with them, they kind of have the luxury of going towards any of them. And she's like, she doesn't know if it would be a benefit to really solidify with Melody and Mallory, but we could. So she's kind of just weighing the pros and cons between which group she wants to target next week or not. Angela says that it's great that Kamu wants to solidify stuff with Dee and solidify stuff with us. So that's good. And Dee's like, and I also feel like Melody is genuine when Melody says that she wants to actually work with them and that she appreciates that she saved them last week. So they're trying to talk about how like building something with Melody and Mallory might make sense. Mallory comes into the room, and when Mallory comes into the room, Dee is like, hey, you know, Drew and Barrett and us, we were talking and we were thinking that we might need to solidify something with you guys. And Mallory says she's down. So that's a budding situation. Melody, Mallory plus the crossover is becoming a 7 is like in the potential works, allegedly. So put a pin in that. Later on, Drew talks to Devins one-on-one, and he kind of tells Devins one-on-one what happened upstairs. It's all the same shit. Lala was leading it. Yash was chiming in a lot. Yash made the comment that the icons don't need to be in this game because they've already had the same experience. He also pushes the Kamu thing. So he kind of just says literally all of the same things that he said earlier. Later on, Chuck, Haley, and Kamu talk, and they're talking for an hour and a half. It's a very long conversation, and it's bullshit because Kamu doesn't like them that much at all. Chuck's just complaining about bullshit, and he doesn't know what's going on. Haley's complaining she don't know what's going on either. They think Kamu like them, he don't. It was an irrelevant conversation, but it went on for so long. There was an excerpt that I wrote down from Chuck because if you don't recall, last night, Taylor was trying to give Chuck advice on how to campaign or what he should do with his campaign. And in this conversation, Chuck is referencing that advice that Taylor was trying to give him. And this is what he says. He says, yeah, I talked to Taylor. Girl was giving me a campaign speech yesterday. I'm like, Taylor, out of everyone, you're giving the naval officer a campaign? It's people who don't have a game. It's people who haven't had a game for 4 weeks and thinking that they run shit. They don't run shit. I was running shit for 4 weeks and you're trying to give me game? You're trying to give me advice? You know, she was crying to me talking. She was saying, can you talk to your girl for me? Can you talk to your girl for me? But it's okay. It's okay. Everyone now has wisdom. Everyone wants to now give me advice on how to campaign, you know, even though they were a non-consideration 4 weeks in a row. Everyone, it's okay though. It's okay. Chuck, please. Please. This man was making fun of Taylor, giving him campaign advice. Mind you, he hasn't campaigned. He will be going home if Haley wins the blockbuster. He's speaking to Kamu, who wants to evict him. Send him home. Anyways, Devin talks to D, and Devin is saying, who do we want to evict, Haley or Chuck? And D's like, honestly, I don't know. I'm going back and forth on it. We're going to have to try to figure that out later on because you know D and Devin's are last minute as people. So put a pin in that because, girl, they don't know. But D says, look, the low-key thing, the tea is Drew and Barrett think that they don't know, that we don't know that they're making all these different alliances. We know y'all are making all these different alliances. Y'all are telling me the names, and it's like, oh, now you want to tell us the name of these alliances. Y'all have been having these names, and y'all want to tell us now. D's like, they're trying to push Kamu because that is going to align with that narrative, honestly. And I feel like we don't need to necessarily do that. We can see which side we want to choose. We can go between which side we want to choose because we don't need to just go directly with Drew and Barrett. And Devin's is like, exactly, because Drew was telling me that Melody and Mallory want to target Kamu. And it's like, I didn't even ask. Like, we weren't even talking about Melody and Mallory. Y'all brought them up and tried to steer us away from them. So it's still in the air whether D and them will target Melody and Mallory or whether they'll target Taylor, Yash, and Lala. So put a pin in that. Melody talks to Barrett, and Melody is reiterating that they need to target Kamu. She's like, she feels bad that she would have to target potentially Taylor, Lala, and Yash, or nominate Taylor, Lala, and Yash, because Taylor, Lala, and Yash keep saying they want to preserve Kamu. And if she wants to target Kamu, she feels like she might need to nominate one of them, and she wouldn't like that. She doesn't really feel good about that. Mallory comes in. Well, that was Mallory who said that. My bad, not Melody. Mallory comes in, and that's what she says. And they're saying, should they potentially target the icons after Kamu, or should they target Taylor and Lala after Kamu? And that's kind of their next idea. They definitely want Chuck gone. They definitely want Kamu gone. But after that, they're like, which way should we go? Should we take out the icons? Should we take out Taylor, Lala, and Yash? And Mallory is like, I think the icons are more willing to target Kamu. So she's leaning towards working with the icons for now. So there's that. We'll see what happens. I'm assuming Barrett and Drew will tell them to work with the icons and to target Taylor, Yash, and Lala after Kamu and Chuck are gone. So there is that. Mallory does talk to Angela, and they talk about how they want Angela wants Haley to go home. She's like, I can't have Haley come back and still be mad at me and still be targeting me. So she wants to evict her, and she will be evicting her regardless. Mallory is telling her how Kamu was telling everybody how he brought her up there to make TV. And it's just like, I heard about that, and that was weird. So Mallory's also pushing this anti-Kamu narrative to Angela. So let's see if it sticks with Angela. Haley then talks to Drew. She does her campaign, and by campaign, I mean she kind of complains. And Drew is doing a good job at making her feel comfortable. Honestly, everyone who talks to Haley, she just leaves the conversation trusting them. Because Drew is basically just like, oh yeah, you probably have my vote. You probably have Kamu's vote. He talks about potentially having the icon. She's like, I don't think I do. He's like, oh, maybe you do. And then she leaves this conversation like, oh, great, I have Drew. Like, she thinks she has Drew. She thinks she has Yash because they have these one-on-one conversations with her. And it's like, girl, do you though? You don't. So there's that. She then talks to Chuck and she's talking about next week. And they're like, well, how are you going to pivot next week? What are you going to do next week? She's not really sure, but she thinks that she has Drew. She thinks she has Barrett. She thinks she has Kamu. So she's like, I feel like the only people I don't have trust with are Angela, D, and potentially Taylor and Lala. So she feels like those are the people who she'd have to look at potentially targeting. She also mentions that if Angela tries to have a talk with her and apologize and asks her to apologize, that she won't be apologizing back. She's going to be like, for what? Why do I need to apologize? You isolated and bullied me. And because you're a bully, I don't need to apologize to you, and yada, yada, yada. So Haley feels like she got bullied by Angela, which Angela did cuss her ass out. So there's that. After this, Layla and Taylor. Child, I'm getting tired. Lala and Taylor, they talked for a while. It was like an hour and a half. They were in the HOH room and they were just having a key. They were gossiping about the girls. They were gossiping about the Kamu and Chuck beef, about Angela and Haley and Dee. They went through everybody. They literally were just kikiing. There was a moment where they kind of had a back and forth about who would go home in an eviction scenario. Taylor feels like if she's nominated next to Lala, she'd go home. Lala feels like she'd go home. And then they went towards like if they were in final two. Taylor feels like she'd lose to Lala. Lala feels like she'd lose to Taylor. So that was just a funny conversation as well. There's that. Barrett talks to the cameras. He says, shout out to all the people who do daily live feed updates. So it's a big shout out to me. Thank you, Barrett. Shout out to you too. Hopefully you start playing the game. No shade. Mallory does talk to Barrett after this. And this is when she really was talking about the conversation about potentially turning on Lala Taylor and Yash and how she feels bad about it. And Barrett specifically asks her, what would her nominations be? She says it would be whoever stays between Chuck and Haley, Kamu, and then the third person, she's not sure. She's like, if I decide to align with the icons, I would nominate Yash as the third person. If I decide to nominate with align with Yash, Taylor, and Lala, then she would nominate D as the third person. So either way, she says she wants to target Kamu, but that third nominee would either be D or it would be Yash, depending on which side she tries to align with. We know Barrett is going to have probably the most influence on this, and Barrett will probably influence her to nominate Yash instead of D. So very likely Mallory's nominees would be Yash, Kamu, and whoever stays between Chuck and Haley. So there's that. Devin and Angela, they talk after this. And Angela is talking about how Kamu wants to link up with them because he probably thinks they have the powers. She is excited and glad that he wants to link up with them, though, and so is Devins. And they talk about how, like, the potential of him and Dee having a power makes people probably scared to nominate them and target them, which is good for their game, and that Devins is going to continue to lean into that. Angela keeps saying, yeah, you don't have to tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't want the burden of knowing on me. So she doesn't want to know whether or not they have the powers. So they have the scapegoat of not telling her because she keeps telling them not to tell her. No shade. And so Devins makes the comment. He says, I don't think anyone will target us next week. I genuinely don't. I think we're insulated. And Angela's like, Taylor will. And Devins is like, I don't think Taylor will target me because I'm in a few different groupings with her. And Angela's like, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were in a few. And Devin's like, yeah, I'm in a few different groupings with Taylor. I don't think she'd target me. I'm not worried about that at all. She even helped me this week. Her and Yash helped me with Lala. They made sure Lala didn't nominate me. And Angela's like, that's not true. She actually told Lala to nominate all three of us. Taylor told Lala to nominate me, you, and Dee. And Lala is the reason that didn't happen. So this is what Angela's telling Devins. I remember yesterday, after Lala had the conversation with Angela about the icons being pitched, she didn't mention it to Dee. First of all, Lala never told her Taylor said that. What Lala told Angela was, it's rumblings that the icons will be the next target. Angela talked to Dee and she told Dee, Lala really likes you and me. Now she's telling Devins that Lala said that Taylor wanted all three of us on the block and she prevented that. So she's relayed this story twice in two totally different ways, and both were a lie. Neither were true. So I think this might just be Angela's method of trying to get Devins to target Taylor. I will say Devins doesn't like Angela that much, and I don't think he trusts her retelling of things. So even in this moment when she said that, he was like, "Oh, okay, well then we'll just see when we get there," because I don't think he believes what she says when she says that that Taylor told Lala to target him. I think he genuinely believes that Taylor prevented him from being nominated, Taylor and Yash. So there's that. After this, Dee and Angela talk, and this was the last conversation I caught before we started. They were still kind of talking when we got into it, so I don't know everything they said, but the beginning of the conversation was they're concerned that people want to keep Haley in the game to target them. So we saw that it was up in the air earlier on who Dee wanted to evict. But after this conversation, Angela's like, we need to definitely evict Haley. I'm definitely evicting Haley. And Dee is leaning that way as well because they think people are trying to keep Haley in the game to target them. They say Drew is now talking to Haley more than he ever has, and that's weird. Apparently, Barrett told them that Mallory wants Haley to potentially stay, and they don't like that either. So they feel like wary of Haley going home, and they feel like they need to make sure that she's evicted because she might target them and people might use that against them. Dee also mentioned in this conversation that she noticed Drew keeps mentioning he might have been the target last week, and they just re-implement deny. Angela's like, we just need to deny it. We need to say that we had his back no matter what, and we need to make sure that he doesn't think that we were ever a part of that plan and that it was always the other people, period. They definitely talked some more after this, but like I said, I'm not sure exactly what was said because I went live, baby. Let's see what's going on in the feeds. It looks like a bunch of hoopla. Sounds like a whole lot of hoopla. No shade. Definitely get into the other stuff we have going on. Of course, get into the Patreon. Every Thursday we're live during the Thursday live eviction, and we're going to be doing stuff live on Sundays as well. So join us for that. Join the Discord. Get into the bracketology. Send in your vote for the Reality Rewind. Get into the schedule on the other stuff we do other than Big Brother. Get into the Big Brother schedule and all of that. And let me get into these feeds.